So last week, we explored the existence and nature of God, as well as how we can develop a personal relationship with God. Today, I would like to talk about divine interdependence, how everything in the universe was designed to function in relationship with each other and with God. Why is this important? Because that's why we're not happy most of the time. We don't know how we're supposed to relate with each other and how to relate with God. It's like trying to play Super Smash Brothers without knowing all the controls. Button mashing can only get you so far. Fortunately, the divine principle is like the user manual for life, so it can help us understand some key principles that allow us to function optimally. So today I'm going to cover 3 principles that will help us understand how this universe works, how we're supposed to relate with each other. So the first principle is everything, including God, is made of energy. Let's read. The fundamental energy of God's being is also eternal, self-existent, and absolute. It is the origin of all energies and forces that allow created beings to exist. We call this fundamental energy universal prime energy. So universal prime energy is like God's energy. As the reading says here, the principle says that energy is eternal, it's self-existent and absolute, just as God is. And that energy is also the origin of all energies that allow us to exist. So one key point I want people to catch from this is that many times we see God as this separate, unchanging being that is very distant or unrelated to us. Almost like God is all the way up there in heaven and divine, and we're just peons, right? Very distant, unconnected, disconnected. However, according to this principle, God's energy is in everything that God created, including us. So that means that in one sense, God is in everything. God's energy is much closer to us than we may realize. Okay, let's take a look at the next principle. Give and receive action is required for creation and growth. I'm going to read that again. Give and receive action is required for creation and growth. Let's read. The forces generated by give and take action are the foundation for God's existence, upon which God eternally exists and generates all forces needed to create and sustain the universe. So this statement seems very simple. Okay, you need give and take action, or this kind of interaction, giving and receiving. We need that, right? But what the principle is saying is that this whole universe can only function through this fundamental interaction or multitude of these give and receive relationships, including this principle applies to God as well. So that means that even the Almighty God needs an object partner to interact with in order for God to exist and function. In other words, even God must obey his own principles that he created. So this is revolutionary if you really think about it. It means that God needs an object partner, his creation, aka us, human beings, to interact with for him to feel complete. For God to even exist, God needs an object partner to relate with. Let's continue to read. For example, atoms come into existence when electrons assemble about a nucleus and engage in electromagnetic interaction, which is a type of give and take action. So here we see that there's nucleus and electrons interacting together, and that's what forms an atom. So Seems like a science textbook at this point, but these are universal principles. Let's look at another example. The human body maintains its life through the give and take actions between arteries and veins, inhalation and exhalation, sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves, and so forth. So all these reciprocal systems in the human body allow us to sustain our physical life, right? If one of these systems weren't working or it was imbalanced, then it shows up as a health issue, health problem. Another example of this give and receive action is the interaction between our mind and our body, which allows us to lead a purposeful life. We covered this last week in the dual characteristics. If there was no interaction between our mind and our body, then we would be either comatose or paralyzed, right? If our mind works but our body doesn't, or if our body functions but our mind doesn't, then we wouldn't be able to function. So that's another example of this natural give and receive action that is necessary for us to exist. Let's look at another example. The give and take between husband and wife in a family, among people in a society, between the government and citizens in a nation, and among the nations of the world are essential for them to live together in harmony and peace. Now, many times, the reality that we see in the relationships around us are not so much in harmony and peace, right? There's conflict between husband and wife, within different communities, even warring between nations. Why is that? It's because the give and receive action is either out of balance or out of order. So, for example, when we're breathing, we need balance in the amount of air that we exhale and we inhale. Have you ever tried just inhaling? It gets very uncomfortable very quickly. Or same thing, like just exhaling, right? You just breathe out some more, and then it gets very uncomfortable because you need to actually breathe in and out in equal amounts in order for there to be balance, a healthy give and receive action. So when a relationship is not working, it means that there's something out of balance in terms of the amount given and received. That's one example. Another example is the proper order, right? It's called give and take action or give and receive action. In business, you need to invest first in order to realize a return, right? You can't expect a return without having invested something. Actually, there's even a book called Give and Take by the author Adam Grant. And his whole premise of the book is saying that by giving or helping others first, that's what drives the success of businesses. A lot of services these days, they put a lot of value up front. You know, businesses like Google or Amazon, why is it growing and developing so much? Part of it is that they give tremendous value for free up front. And so naturally, by this principle of give and receive, that's what drives their success. Another example of why things may be out of order is if one side is not able to receive. So one example of that is like, let's say your toilet is clogged, right? It's like you're flushing, there's a lot of water going in, but there's not enough, something's blocking it from going through. Or recently, we had a flash flood, and the whole kind of drainage system or the septic system was full, and it kind of over flooded because the drainage wasn't sufficient for the amount of water, rainwater that was coming down. So the point I'm trying to make here is that for give and take action, which is the fundamental function that allows everything to exist and grow, if that's out of balance or out of order, that's where dysfunction comes from. So this principle of give and take naturally applies also in our relationships. I don't know if anyone has felt or experienced being stuck in a dysfunctional relationship. Again, it either means that that relationship is out of balance, or you're not giving correctly, or maybe you're not receiving correctly or receiving well. So one example from my personal, I remember when we first got engaged, I committed to, giving a call to my spouse every week. I think for a full 9 months, I was calling every week. And I remember 90% of the time I was speaking, and 10% of the time it was mostly silence. Very uncomfortable, but that's because it was not balanced. And I'm sure it was uncomfortable for her as well, because I was talking a lot, but we weren't actually having a conversation per se. At least she picked up the phone. It's much better now, but just saying, that's an example of when the give and take is not balanced. Or in the term of giving, right? Learning to give love to my wife in ways that she wanted me instead of the way I wanted. Sometimes we think, I'm giving love, I'm really showing affection, I'm doing everything I can. But if you studied something called the 5 love languages, you'll learn that people experience and feel love in different ways. So although I might feel love by physical touch and intimacy, actually she would rather me just do the dishes and clean the floor, and that's what makes her feel more loved. So even though I feel like I've been giving, it's important from the giver side to know how to give effectively in a way that is appreciated by the recipient. So this is something that I've continually, and I'm sure all husbands and wives are learning how to do that. Now, another key point in how to make give and receive action flow well is learning to receive. Now, this is sometimes overlooked as a key component, but I feel like this is one of the most important things to make a relationship work, is to learn to receive well with gratitude. I remember one time, this was after my 3rd year of mission training, the organization offered a scholarship, a substantial scholarship, for 2 of us, myself and a colleague, for our service that we did for 3 years. And I remember she really felt uncomfortable and she didn't want to receive it. In fact, she rejected the scholarship. For me, I was so grateful. I was like, yes, I could use every dollar to help pay for college. So I received it, and I think that wasn't the intention, but I continued to invest in the organization, in the ministry, because of this relationship where I really felt appreciated by the organization. I naturally invested back. So receiving well is really important. And sometimes it also means being able to receive criticism from your boss, maybe, or from your spouse. Receiving it in a way that you can learn to digest and continue to build on that relationship. One quick story, you might have heard it before. One time I went to Korea, and there was this inaugural ceremony where I was appointed as a youth leader on an international scale. And anyway, long story short, it happened to be my birthday. I didn't know about the ceremony. I didn't actually want to wear a suit that day. So I came a little bit casual with like a shirt, button-down shirt and jeans. And long story short, got in trouble, got publicly reprimanded for not wearing a suit, which was the proper attire for that ceremony. And I remember thinking at the moment, very upset, being publicly reprimanded. But, I took it. I had some counsel, and I realized that I made it very uncomfortable for my bosses, and also wasn't really representing America well in that situation. So I decided to, invest in buying a new suit that fit me better and wearing it to my next meeting with my boss. And he was delighted. He felt like I was able to really receive that criticism and adapt to it. And since then, the relationship really blossomed. So sometimes learning to receive criticism well and really learning and adapting is a skill that also on the receiving side needs to learn in order to help that relationship grow to the next level. All right, so that's enough on give and receive for now. Let's go to the third principle. The four-position foundation is the structure for all goodness. This whole process in which out of God, the origin, two entities are separately manifested and reunited in oneness is called origin, division, union. Any one of the four positions may assume the position of subject partner and engage the other three as its object partners. When the origin, the subject partner, and the object partner projected from the origin and their union all fulfill the three object purpose, the four position foundation is established. Okay, that was a lot of words, but as you can see in the image, there's four positions, God at the top and the center, some representative kind of division, and then a coming back together. So let's see how this principle of the four-position foundation applies to us as individuals. Let's read. Let us consider the example of human beings. If and when the mind stands as an object partner before God and revolves around him, resonating in oneness with him, and when the body becomes one with this mind, the individual resembles God's dual characteristics and thus stand as God's embodied object partner. Thereupon, the person fulfills the purpose of creation. So in the individual, as a human being, as an individual, the application of the four-position foundation is that your mind and body are united, and your mind is also united with God. Now, what does that look like? So, for example, having the discipline to start the day early in the morning with prayer or studying scriptures, or even just getting up to exercise. That's actually an example of your mind being subject over your body, because your body wants to be comfortable, wants to relax, is kind of lazy, doesn't want to do anything. But your mind has a vision, a desire to grow, to develop. And so let's say you have that discipline where your mind wants to exercise and you get your body to follow. That's a unity between your mind and body. But one more level of that is uniting your mind with God. Now, what does that mean? That means that you're learning to live according to your conscience, what you think is right and wrong, or more deeply, your original mind. That original mind is something that resonates with God, and you kind of know it. Actually, we all have an original mind, which is rooted in God's heart. So if you really train your mind to think from, what would God want me to do in this moment, or today, or with my life? That's an example of unity between God and your mind. So fully applying this four position foundation, how that looks like in an individual is that your mind and body are united, and your mind is also united with God's will for you. And when you do that, according to the principle, you're able to fulfill your full potential or your purpose of creation. Now let's look at how this four position foundation applies in the family. Let's read. The place where Adam and Eve become perfectly one in heart and body as husband and wife is also the place where God, the subject partner, giving love, and human beings, the object partners, returning beauty, become united. This is the center of goodness where the purpose of creation is fulfilled. Here, God, our parent, draws near and abides within his perfected children and rests peacefully for eternity. So applying this four position foundation in the family, what it looks like is there's God at the center, then there's husband and there's wife, and then the union is the children, creating basically a beautiful family. Just yesterday, I attended a commitment ceremony. It's a tradition that we have in our community where two individuals basically commit their life and their love to each other and to God as an engagement before they receive the marriage blessing. So yeah, I attended that and it was really beautiful. I was struggling a little bit because of my busy schedule whether or not to go, but I ended up going. And I remember one of the things in that ceremony was each person shares their kind of commitment to their future spouse. And the brother, he was saying how, while he was in this period of 21 days of daily communication with her, he really felt that at one moment, God coming to him and saying, I want you to really take care of her on my behalf. There was this divine sense that it wasn't just about me loving her, but really being the medium through which God can love her. And that statement that he said, it reminded me actually of a very similar experience I had when I was preparing for my marriage blessing, where I remember I was asking God many questions in preparation for that. And one of the responses that I got was that I really want you to love her on my behalf. And I felt this feeling of like responsibility that this is God's daughter and I need to take care of her. I need to love her just as God would want to love her. So I felt this was a really beautiful tradition. And this is an example. In fact, she actually talked about this four position foundation. I think in the benediction prayer, Dr. Young prayed about fulfilling this four position foundation. So this principle of four position foundation is very real in our community. It's actually the kind of like the blueprint of how we are meant to strive towards this original ideal in the way that we were designed. So if we were to expand this concept of centering on God, these dual entities coming together in harmony and unity from the family level to the society and the world level, then you can see centered on God, if humanity is able to take care of the physical environment, the earth, in harmony, then we would create this ideal, sustainable living environment. Okay, that was a lot. Let's now read the final passage for today to wrap up on this topic of divine interdependence. The four position foundation is the fundamental foundation of goodness. It is a realization of God's purpose of creation. It is the fundamental foundation for the life of all beings, providing all the forces necessary for their existence and enabling God to abide in them. Therefore, the four position foundation is God's eternal purpose of creation. Quite a statement. seems like this four-position foundation is like the secret to the universe. And according to the principle, it is. It is the secret to goodness. So the topic of divine interdependence means that just as we need God to feel our full value, God also needs to relate with us to feel joy. It's a relationship, right? So the more we reflect God's original nature, naturally, the more joy God is going to feel. We'll cover this topic in more detail next week when we cover the purpose of creation. So in summary, God's energy is in everything, including us. The entire universe, including God, functions through give and receive relationships. And I covered 3 of the key blocking points in healthy give and receive relationships, right? If it's out of balance, or if you're not good at giving, or if you're not good at receiving, then this give and receive interaction doesn't function well. The 4-position foundation with God at the center is the structure for all goodness. And divine interdependence means we need God in all of our relationships, and God needs us to feel complete and to feel joy. So today's topic may have been a little more on the theoretical side, but I hope you could catch the significance of knowing that God's energy is in everything, and that everything was designed to be in pairs, and to develop through this kind of give and receive action. Ultimately, God wants to be in all of our relationships, but it's really up to us as his object partners to receive the love and give the love back in the form of beauty in order to bring God joy. So let's try our best to keep God at the center of each of our relationships and strive to create harmony and peace in all the interactions we have with others. May God bless you and your family this week.